What up, y'all? This is Tracy from Nerd Squish, and today we're going to be ranking the houses of Halloween Horror Nights 2022. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Halloween Horror Nights 2022, for me personally, has come and gone. Sadly. So today I want to do a little overview, review, and ranking of all things Halloween Horror Nights 2022. We're talking houses, we're talking scare zones, we're talking about it all. Before we get into the details, if you're new here, this is Nerd Squish, where we take everything spooky and we take everything nerdy and we squish it all together. So if you like horror, Halloween, and pop culture, definitely hit that subscribe button so you can see more videos from us in the future. I think to start off, let's start with the scare zones, because there's only 5 of them. We can kind of knock that out before we get into the houses. Starting from the bottom with number 5, we're gonna go with the Major Suites scare zone. Now, this is the biggest scare zone that we have, and I loved the idea of this. I really did. Not only the idea of it, but then going further, and a Universal podcast had actually told like a little story of a background of what this is truly about. And like, I was hyped. I was like, this sounds really, really cool. This year was so good. Even the bottom of the lists are still really good. That just goes to show you how big they did it for HHN 31. But this one just, I don't know, it was missing something. I think my biggest complaint is they had a lot to the scare zone, but what they needed more of was lights. It was very dark, which, I get it. It's Halloween, it's nighttime, it's spooky. You want it to be dark. I get that, but I don't know, like specifically in areas where you're walking in and they have like the parade floats, it was like, I don't know what's happening. And it got so dark sometimes that like I didn't know, like, when I'm passing people, I'm like, are you a scare actor or are you just like a person? Because I can't tell. And another thing about the scare zone was it was loud as hell. So they have this like track of like a woman just hysterically screaming, playing the entire time. It wasn't like the scream like came and went at certain times when things were spookier. I just felt like there was this continuous screaming in my ear that would not give up. And it got on my nerves. I couldn't spend too much time in this zone. What did work was obviously the character interactions were fantastic in this zone. I love, of course, like the facade of the tribute store and all that, but I think the standout from this zone in particular was the Kern Studios floats. As a girl born and raised in Louisiana, I love that Kern Studios is involved with making the floats and other props for Universal Studios, so I love getting that little taste of home when I'm out traveling. Coming in at number 4, we have Halloween Horrors. The Pumpkin Lord is tight. He was the tightest. I think we could all agree. The thirst that everyone had for the Pumpkin Lord was weird, but amazing. The fact that he's greeting you as you walk in the gates of Halloween Horror Nights, I love that. But the rest of the scare zone was whack. Like, it was just whack. First of all, at night, it's so dark in the rest of the scare zone that you really can't see any of the details of these little stands or props that they have up there. And then I really thought the pumpkin archway was gonna be more lit up. Again, I just thought it was too dark. Here's the girl complaining that, oh, a spooky Halloween event's too dark, but it was. Like, you really just couldn't see anything. Like, am I old? Do my eyes not work? I don't know. Overall, he was great, but it was a little lackluster. Coming in at number 3, we have Scarecrow Cursed Soil. Now, I didn't really have high hopes for this scare zone, as it was kind of a sequel or, you know, an expansion on the Scarecrow haunted house that they had back in 2017, which everyone loved, and I didn't get it. I was kind of putting my experience in the haunted house to what I thought the scare zone was gonna be, so I was like, oh, it's gonna be stupid. I'm not gonna enjoy it. And this was actually a really fun one to walk in on. The fact that you're walking into this like farm, barn area, and all the creature designs were really, really fun, and they actually had some pretty good scares. Plus, with the popularity of the corn kid, and you just have like corn monsters everywhere, who doesn't love that? And not only that, but the music was really fun. They had that real twangy country music as you walked through, and I don't know, I just thought that brought so much to it. Coming in at number 2, we have Conjure the Dark. This scare zone was so metal. I loved it. The stage show was gorgeous. The girl that was up on that stage playing the witch killed it every single night. And they're playing like this metal music. So like I would walk by and I would get distracted. Like didn't matter if I had like a plan, I was going somewhere. If I was passing by the scare zone, I had to stop and like check it out and just like respect this because it was so tight. And my pick for #1 scare zone this year is Graveyard Deadly Unrest. I loved this scare zone. I think a lot of it just had to do with like, you know, you're in this graveyard, you get the fog, you get the zombies, you get the, you know, the skeleton boys. Like I just loved it. I loved hanging out in the scare zone, and they had some pretty dang good scares, but props first and foremost to the twins that would play like patty cake, because they killed it every single night. I feel like every single time I went through the scare zone, there was like a new character to see, or you would see the same characters, but doing something completely new and crazy. And so it was always just really interesting to walk through. I know we come to this event for the haunted houses, but honestly, the scare zones are where it's at, because not only do you have these cool characters and these cool environments, but like they really play off of the crowd and like how you're reacting to things. Whereas I feel like the haunted house can do that to an extent, but they still have like a script and certain things and certain places they're supposed to be. And the scare zones can go a little wild. So, you know, in Graveyard Deadly Unrest, they had this guy that was like a gargoyle statue, and he had this little patch of grass, and he's got his hand and he's like pretending like he's gonna like hit the grass, and I'm like, do it, and he does it, and I was just, you know, I'm drunk off of lacto coolers, having the time of my life, screaming like this gargoyle hitting grass was the best moment of my life. Yes! And you know it was. Now, let's get into the haunted houses. This was really hard for me to rank, as again, this was a stellar year. This was the year where I think I've liked the majority of the haunted houses. Now, I will tell you that there's one for sure, two stinkers in my opinion in this lineup, but all the other houses are amazing. Starting from the bottom at number 10, we have Spirits of the Coven. Oh, Spirits of the Coven, what went wrong? This was one of the houses that I was the most excited about for this year. Flapper witches in a speakeasy? Yes, please. But then I walked through it and I was like, no, thank you. No, thank you. I've had enough. No more. So the storyline in itself is confusing. I mean, I can tell I'm in the 1920s because of the clothes. That's about all I could understand. You really couldn't see the transition of like, oh, we have these beautiful witches luring you in, and then like they're slowly becoming more witch-like and creepy, and then you're gone. No, I didn't get that. I got, okay, we're in a bar. I don't know what's happening. There's like random people cutting pigs. I don't know why, because they weren't even like witches. It was just like dudes in 20s outfits like gutting pigs, and I was like, what? And then all of a sudden you're at the end and there's this witch on a stage and she's doing some stuff, and there's glowy like ritual witchy symbols, and it ended. I noticed this in a lot of houses this year, but this one, it stuck out the most. My first run through of this, there was no scare actors. Like, I would walk in a room that you could clearly tell, like, somebody's supposed to be right there. They're supposed to be right there, but nobody was there. And, like, I feel like every other room was like that. My second walkthrough of this house, there were a couple more scare actors, but I think overall, the event as a whole, now, I don't know why. I don't know if this is a reflection of maybe like the pandemic and, you know, they just couldn't staff it properly, which is mind-blowing to me because, sweetheart, if I lived in Florida, if I lived in the Orlando area, I would be auditioning like first day. I'd be there. Let me be spooky. Let me scare people. Like, I want to be a Halloween Horror Nights scare actor so bad, but I don't live there. Coming at number 9, we have Descendants of Destruction. This house was very generic and just not very memorable to me. And I know what you're thinking. Tracy, you had a lot of lacto coolers. You're having a good time. You just don't remember it. No. I wish that was the excuse. I went through all these houses like multiple times while I was there. And before I sat down and really like reviewed this, I was like, you know what, let me watch run-throughs that people have made videos of and stuff. I rewatched this and I was like, I don't remember any of this happening. And as I'm watching it now, I know why, because this is just not interesting. The one thing that I'll give them props for in this house was like the rooms that you had like the glowy stalagmites? Stalactites? I think it was stalagmites because they go from the floor up. Is that right? Oh God, I should know this. But those rooms and like the mushrooms and it was like this glowy like neon lights, that was really cool to go through. That's all that house had to offer for me. At number 8, we have bugs eaten alive. I was not excited about this because bugs are disgusting. I hate bugs. This was the very first house that I walked through this year. Like, I am nervous. I'm like, if I see a spider, I'm just gonna punch it right in its face. I don't care if it's like a prop or if it's a scare actor, I'm gonna... I was ready. So my first run through, they made me go first because they knew I was scared of bugs. I pretty much looked at the ground the whole time. I'm not gonna lie. But through my second run through, I realized this was actually, even though it was gross, it was a great storyline. The actors in this house were probably some of the standouts because they were really going hard. One specific scene that like haunts me, I'm pretty sure it was in the spider room. I don't know, it's kind of blurry to me because I was just terrified and like, you know, making brown pants the whole house, but they have this one scene that I'm pretty sure was in the spider room, and this guy's like holding his stomach as like stuff's coming out of it, and he's like, inside of me, and like, it's haunting me. This is on the bottom half of my list because bugs are gross and giant spiders should never be in my life. So, coming in at number 7, we have Horrors of Blumhouse. I was not excited about this house. Every Blumhouse compilation that they've ever had has been a stinker. But I think this one definitely, I don't know if it was like, it seemed as good as it was because I expected it to be terrible. So when it was good, I was like, huh. And I really don't think the freaky half or the black phone half like overpowered each other. I think they were both like equally as good. In different ways. Freaky definitely was like a comedy house. I loved that. It had me cracking up. But my one complaint is why did they not incorporate the blacklight haunted house that's featured in Freaky? That would have been so fun to be like in the house and you're chasing after the Blissfield butcher, but she's like, it's really Millie, but it's the Blissfield. I don't know. That should have been in this house. And the black phone side definitely did bring the scares. I really didn't know how they were gonna take this house or this basement and make it like a whole house. And I guess because it was only like half a house, that's how they pulled it off. But they did a good job on making you feel like isolated in this house. And there was like a scene where you're walking into the kitchen trying to escape and like, the grabber's like in the chair, and I know he was a prop. But every time I passed that dude, I was like, if you get up. I'm kidding, I would never punch a scare actor, but I was watching him. Coming in at number 6, we have Hellblock Horror. Considering that this house was a last minute scramble to put together when like an IP got pulled at the last minute, I really did not think this was gonna be a good house. But boy, was I surprised at how fun this house was. So you're in this house that has all these monsters that are in this prison. They're breaking loose. They're fighting each other. You're in the midst of it like, huh, you know, it's great. But what was really fun is all the monsters, or the majority of the monsters, are monsters that kind of come from HHN lore. So it was fun to walk through and like try to pick out the ones that I knew. So we had everything from Yeti to the aliens from Invasion, vampires from The Hive, and the like wiggly tentacle projection monster from Case Files Unearthed. By no means was this house like a mind-blowing experience, but I don't know, I always had a good time and the monsters always kind of got me. Coming in at number 5, we have Fiesta de Chupacabras. This house was so fun. To me, this house was very creative and very different from not only the houses that they had this year, but houses that I've seen in the past at Halloween Horror Nights, because let's face it, you do this every year, things are gonna start to seem familiar or whatever, and I thought this was a really fun and interesting concept. The Chupacabra puppets were adorable, and I wanted to hug them. I'm that white girl that like sees the big mean puppy and I'm like, but but we can take it home. And what I liked is that, you know, obviously puppets are big and expensive and all that stuff. So in the rooms where, you know, you didn't have a puppet, they would incorporate other things to make you feel like the chupacabra was near, whether it was like the shaking of like a set, walls or boxes, or they would have projections through like sheets that were hung up that the people of the village were like drying. So they really, really got creative with the chupacabra, which I love. And of course, I loved all the unique masks that they made for the Fiesta de Chupacabras. Really, really great house, and I would love to see more like urban legend houses like this in the future. Coming in at number 4, we have Universal Monsters Legends Collide. Now I know what you're thinking. Tracy's precious Universal Monsters aren't number 1. I wanted it to be. I wanted this to be number 1. But out of all the Universal Monster houses that I have seen, this wasn't the best. Now, the sets were gorgeous. The costumes were gorgeous. So I loved being, you know, feeling like I'm in Egypt and I'm running from the mummy. Like, I love that. But it's Legends Collide. We're supposed to have the mummy, Dracula, and the Wolfman. They're fighting for an amulet, you know, all for different reasons, and that did not come across. It was mostly just the mummy, like, randomly popping up at you from the sand. And, like, sometimes the Wolfman showed up, and, you know, I was, like, screaming and freaking out because I love the Wolfman, but it just didn't come across the storyline. Dracula was not there at all, and that's why I was confused, is because throughout this house, a different monster wins each night, and both times that I went through it, it was the Wolfman, and he's holding Dracula's head, and I was like, yeah, my boy Wolfman, wait a minute, where'd you get that? Where'd you get that head? Because, like, I didn't see him this whole time. Overall, I have to knock this a little bit down on the list just for those reasons alone. But again, the sets were so beautifully immersive. It was gorgeous. Coming in at number 3, we have Halloween. If I would have had to make this list off of just my first run through these houses, this would not be that far up. Because as I said, I feel like staffing was a big issue this year. A lot of rooms and scenes were very empty. But my second run through of this house gave me quite possibly the most scares I have ever had at Halloween Horror Nights ever. And not only that, but I really feel like the scares were the most creative in this house. A lot of times at haunted houses, and specifically at Halloween Horror Nights, if you go frequently, you kind of learn their tricks. You know where the scares are gonna pop from. Like, you see the little boo holes, as they call them, or if you see something super interesting that's gonna take your attention, you know something's gonna pop out from the side. So you kind of get used to that. But this one, they were so creative in how they came at you with the scares that you could not predict it. It was like hedges, shrubbery, if you will, and you see Michael, like, hanging out over there, and you think, okay, he's gonna like walk up and he's gonna scare me, but oh no, it was a mirror trick, and he's not coming like this way, he's coming through the side and he gets you. And then they have the scene where you're inside, but you're seeing the facade of the house, and you see him in the mirror, and you're like, I see you up there, buddy, and all of a sudden he comes through the side and he gets you. And then when you're inside the house, they have this, you know, part where you're looking up the stairs, he's standing at the top of the stairs, and you're like, oh, I see you. And then he comes from the other side and he gets you. There was just so many scenes like this. And then of course, at the very end, they had that whole thing with the mirrors, and you just have like tons of Michaels that you have to walk through. Are they real? Are they fake? Are they real? Are they fake? My favorite game to play at Halloween Horror Nights. So overall, probably the scariest house that I've ever walked through, and I loved it. Coming in at number 2, we have the Weekend After Hours Nightmare. Now, y'all know that I was excited about this house. I am a huge Weekend fan, and I love his music videos and how he incorporates horror into them. Right off the bat, when you're queuing up for this house, it's a party. Like, they're playing his songs, you're dancing, you're ready to go. It's a hype train from the beginning to the end. My one complaint is I hate that my personal favorite, like, song and video, In Your Eyes, I feel like had a very short segment in the house. It didn't really have a dedicated, like, room or scene. It was just like a quick hallway where you saw the girl from the music video. So I felt a little cheated there. Then of course they incorporated like the blinding lights. So you have like kind of, you know, the first 2 videos where he's at the casino, in which he incorporated into his Super Bowl performance, where it's just lights and he's just like doing all this stuff. And so like, I'm in there, I'm dancing. I was dancing, grooving so hard that like one of the sneaky team members that are in all black that kind of sometimes scare you more than the actual scare actors, she was like, okay, lady, come on. You're having too much fun. Let's go. And I was like, but girl, the jams, they are possessing me and we are gonna need an exorcism for me to leave this room right now. They incorporated the whole like toad from the music video where The Weeknd licks it, but like, you know, in the music videos, they don't really go anywhere. Well, they really expand on that in this house, which I loved because you see him licking the frog and you hear it, which was a little gross. But you see the progression of him turning into this like toad monster until the end where you see just this giant grotesque frog Weeknd in the subways. And see, the first go around, I didn't see that. It was just like, okay, we're in empty subways. I mean, I was still dancing, but I was like, empty subways. But this time I was like, empty subways and the frog! Like, it was great. And also, I love that this one kind of was the same as Halloween where you have that end scene, just a bunch of bandaged Weeknds. Real or fake? Real or fake? I loved this house. But my number one favorite haunted house at Halloween Horror Nights 2022 has gotta be Dead Man's Pier Winter's Wake. The best way that I can describe this house is hauntingly beautiful. I've walked into a lot of houses at Halloween Horror Nights and have been amazed and been like, oh my God, this is gorgeous. I have never been, like my jaw was on the floor. It was beautiful. And it definitely helped that the Universal podcast that came up with stories for a lot of the houses and scare zones, they did one for this. And it was gorgeous and sad and spooky. And that feeling was in this house. Even if you didn't listen to that, you felt the sadness and the haunting. It was just gorgeous. The old man at the bar at the very beginning of the house, A+. That boy's performance, like the second walkthrough out of this house, he straight up like looked at my group and he was putting his whole, like everything he's got in his acting and just giving us a show. And it was fantastic. Shout out to the scuba outfits because the dudes in the big scuba gear, so cool looking. Loved them. The costumes were beautiful. The sets were beautiful. They're incorporating music, the violin, the rain coming down, and they have this scene where you're out and you see the violin lady siren and she's playing and she's screaming, and I wanted to live in this scene. It was so cool. Like, how do I become the violin siren? That's who I want to be in my life. Best house ever. Best house ever, even though we can never say the name right.
Dead man's fishing tackle. Very scary, fun fish zone.
We did make it to the new Nightmare Fuel show, and it was great. All the people on that show are super, super talented with the fire and the stuff that they do. It's wild. But my complaint is that it was basically the same show as last year. I think there was like some things that were a little different, but like the overall storyline was the same exact thing. So I kind of wish they would have mixed it up a little bit. But still, like if you get a chance to see the show and you haven't before, there's magic and there's fire. And there's dancing. You don't need anything else. Just go look at it. Another quick thing that I want to run over is that we did the RIP tour for the first time this year. And I've always wanted to do this because it's basically a guided tour through the event. In the haunted houses, it's not an express pass. You skip everyone. You go straight up to the line. There's absolutely no waiting, which is amazing, especially when you're going on a busy night like a Saturday. It was great. However, it was just me, my husband, and our friend, the three of us, and then obviously they usually like to have groups of like 10 to 12. So we got put with a whole bunch of other people because, you know, it's an expensive tour. Not everybody wants to do it. So we were the only three that were like really about it this year. And I'm not saying our group was bad. They were very nice people. But I feel like it would be a lot more fun if you were with like fun people. You know, when I go to Halloween Horror Nights, I'm hyped. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to like that vibe that you feel in the Weeknd house. That's how I am the whole time. And I don't feel like the rest of the group was there. It was kind of like awkward, for lack of any other way to describe it. There is a private RIP tour that you can do, which is really, really expensive. I don't even remember how much it was because I think when I found out the price, I kind of like blacked out. But it's really expensive. But if you can get a big group of people to do it, it's really not that much more than the normal RIP tour. and they basically do whatever you want. Like, on the RIP tour, they kind of have like a schedule to what they do, when they do it, how they show it to you. If you do the private one, you get all of your own friends that you want to invite, and you tell the guide what you want to do. If you want to go through the weekend house over and over and over again the whole night, that's what she's gonna do. I feel like the only way I would ever do the RIP tour again is if I could, you know, get a big enough group of people to do the private tour. That being said, I also think it's a really great thing, you know, if it's your first time at the event, you have one night, it's a great way to ensure that you see everything that the event has to offer. So overall, another fantastic year at Halloween Horror Nights. I love this event. I will be going to this every single year, at least once, as long as I can help it. I'm already looking forward to 2023. Like, let's go. Every year, I feel like it's a 50-50 split. Like, these things were great, this thing was terrible. This year was well-rounded. Everything was fantastic. Let me know in the comments down below if you went this year, what's your favorite scare zone? What's your favorite house? Let me know. I'm dying to know. I love to have these conversations with people. One of my favorite conversations or interactions that I had while I was there is we stayed in Sapphire Falls and we took the boat ride to the park every day. And there was this one day we were last on the boat is packed. So I ended up sitting with this couple. I didn't get their names, but we got into a discussion about like the houses that we liked. And of course, I think Dead Man's Pier is like everybody's favorite, but it was just so fun to like catch up with people and talk about the houses from, you know, all parts of the world. And that's one thing that I really love about this event is that you just make friends with like random other spooky people, and I love that. So if those people that were on the boat ride that I talked to, if they're watching this, y'all are tight. Hey, how y'all doing? Leave a comment, let me know you're here. If you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so when we get a new spooky video on the channel, you'll be notified. Thank y'all for watching, and I'll catch you nerds in the fog.